Hi everybody, good afternoon. I'm Jack Cousins. I'm one of the account managers here at Peppy. On a day-to-day basis, I work with our existing customers to help them get the most from our healthcare platform. So that might be, helping drive user adoption or helping them understand more about our additional services. I joined at the beginning of the year, so I haven't been here super long. I got back from traveling for almost half a year, so joined in. I have a background predominantly in fast growth startups in customer facing roles. And I think what lured me to Peppy was, as someone that suffered with their mental health quite badly during the pandemic, I thought it was super important to be able to give individuals the tools to be able to cope and better their mental and physical well-being. So the opportunity to join Peppy was a no-brainer for me.
So Peppy's existed for just short of 5 years, and the reason it exists is obviously our workforce in the world is changing. That's not something unique to the UK. We're an aging society, whereas workplaces were set up for young, fit adults, predominantly male. The average worker of the future is going to look really quite different, far more diverse, both in terms of gender, their needs, their age, what's going on in their lives. And all of us will go through episodes of our lives where we feel out of control when it comes to our health, be that our physical health, our mental health, our emotional health. Now, if you think about it from a sort of medical point of view, and you turn up at your doctor's office, there may be nothing kind of pathologically wrong with you, but the range of normal from a medical perspective can be quite big. If you're trying to grow your family, if you have a new baby in the family, if you're going through hormonal changes like menopause, going through metabolic changes associated with getting older, that may not feel normal at all to you, or to your loved ones, or in the workplace. And that's really what we're about. We're supporting people through that. And it could be that you're not sure. Maybe you should go and see your doctor, or maybe you don't need to. The data show that men in particular put off until the problem is big enough or inconvenient enough. And sometimes that's too late. And that's why we're here today, to talk to you about men's health. So first of all, we'd like to do a little poll, if we could have the poll question up. So if you are male, or if you have men very close to you in your life, maybe you could answer this question. When was the last time they went to a GP? Less than 6 months ago, 6 months to a year ago, over a year ago, or over 5 years ago? Ooh, interesting. We'll wait for that to close. Wow, this is quite an engaged community. So just in the context of that stat, so in England, men have only 2 sort of predetermined touch points with the healthcare system during their adult lives. Women have over 4 times as many. In general, men of working age do not go to their GP even half as often as women do. That gap completely closes when they're 60 plus and they come back with long-term chronic conditions. 1 in 5 men will die before they hit retirement age. What's even more shocking is that half of those are dying because of preventable causes. And so that's why we're here to talk about men's health, because it matters not just to individuals, not just to their families, but also to the communities and the workplaces. So, Jack, could you tell us a little bit more about the men's health taboo? Mm-hmm. On the one hand, we talk a lot about women's health and reproductive health being taboo. Tell us a little bit about it from what you hear from the people that you talk to.
Yeah, of course. So I think traditionally there's been an emphasis on a condition approach rather than a gender-specific approach, and that's compounded by many other things. Just alluded to the fact that women have 4 times as many natural health touch points than men do. The first one for men being at the age of 40 for their midlife MOT, and even then you need to be proactive in going to that, right? And so I think, just generally speaking, men are not as well conditioned in engaging in their own health or healthcare, unlike their female counterparts. I think also stereotypes play a big play. So notions of like manliness, for example. I myself, I'm sure lots of other people in the room have heard this phrase or even been told to man up, which is a phrase I absolutely hate. When you think about it, it's like what does that actually even mean? And I also think in the back of men's minds there's that voice saying we shouldn't show weakness, we shouldn't show vulnerability. Like I've always got to be at work, I've got to be successful, and therefore it's no surprise at all that 2/5 of employers say that their male employees will wait until their health problem becomes so severe, like you mentioned a few moments ago, which in turn leads to really bad workplace disruption. Of course, if you put off, the likelihood is you're going to be out of work for longer as well. So unfortunately, I think showing vulnerability and being open traditionally just haven't been the norm. So again, we see a high number of employers, 37%, that say just one of the main issues in engaging men with healthcare is just simply their unwillingness to talk about it. And then lastly, just to point out, just to say, just over a quarter of employers state that presenteeism, i.e., showing up to work when you're mentally and physically unfit to do so, is a big problem. Especially when we think about industries maybe that are maybe more male-dominated. So think about your construction businesses, your logistics businesses, even the military, right? As an example, that can possibly pose some pretty dangerous risks.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting what you said about actually you're not proactively contacted. My husband and I were a couple in our 40s, and he only found out about the MOT through actually what the work that we're doing, and went. But there was no letter, there's no SMS if you think about what's out there. And the workplace seems like a natural place to do it. Because obviously the stat here that I'm showing, if you think about how much time men are spending in the workplace, but how little they interact with the healthcare system. So again, Gak, I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit about this. So talking to men about their health and how we talk to men about their health is so important because, again, whereas the sort of default assumption is, of course, most comms are most, male friendly. Actually, if you were to say walk into a GP office, the things you see are, are you pregnant? Come in for your cervical smear test. That's the posters on the wall. Yeah, absolutely. And I think also it does vary industry to industry and company to company. But as you say, men do spend most of their working lives at work. And that makes even just accessing the healthcare quite difficult. It forms a very high barrier to entry. You mentioned your GP practice there. I think 9 times out of 10 they kind of follow normal working hours of being open. Somewhere from 9 to 5:30, maybe a little bit earlier, a little bit later. So that makes it very, very difficult to access. So I think the way in which we need to engage and bring them into the conversation, there are a few ways in which we can do that. And the most obvious conduit is technology, right? I don't want to even think about how many hours I spend on my phone a week. I'm sure most people in the room as well, they're glued to your screen, either for professional purposes or social purposes. So that's a really, really effective way of bringing them into the conversation. But just making it quick and easy is half of the battle. You've got to make sure that you're enticing them and the language you're using is keeping them into the conversation. I'm sure we'll talk about that in a couple of moments. But on the flip side, if you do have funds as a business, having a physical presence is also really, really effective. One of my large financial services customers, as well as saying by having health screening on site is super convenient, people can pop in on their lunch hour, maybe before or slightly after work. It also just creates a little bit of a culture of like, oh, this is normal. It's like, oh, the health screening, I walk past that
that area every day. It's on floor 1, room 2B. I can see people coming in and out. I can see the healthcare professional around the building at lunchtime. So that really helps to kind of like break down those taboos as well. Also, I think a lot of what I've heard, and something we help with at Peppy, you know, for our customers, is like trying to build policies in that make it accepting to nip out of the office like during your working hours. You know, whether that's a policy or, you know, leaders leading by example. You know, then an individual is going to think, oh yeah, I can just nip out for that appointment, you know, for whatever it might have been. And then lastly, this is super basic, but some old school methods work really well as well. So, you know, like putting up posters or collateral around the place. You know, probably best example I can give is chucking posters above your urinal in the men's loos. You know, that experience of going to the loo and standing up peeing next to your colleague is like awkward enough as it is. So, you know, give them something to look at, you know, ingest some information. I think that's a really, really good way, because they might not action it straight away, but it'll be in the back of their mind, so that next time, if, you know, they're encountering that health journey or condition, you know, they're already armed with some information. They know where to go, like who to go speak with.
Amazing. And I mean, what have you, it'd be really interesting. I mean, men's health has been a topic that's increasingly spoken about with employers. I mean, what have been your observations when you're going in to speak to these, you know, really different sort of organizations when it comes to sector and size, and the willingness of, you know, to speak, whether that's as an HR team, as a business leader?
Yeah, I think the appetite to almost maybe level the playing field isn't the right term, but kind of like bring equity to the workplace in terms of like being able to offer that support to men is growing in a lot of our conversations. You know, at Peppy, for example, we see the men's healthcare service being very, very popular. It's one of our fastest growing services, if not the fastest. You know, and as I alluded to earlier, you know, half of the battle is, you know, presenting services or content, whatever that might be, webinars in a language that speaks to them and entices them. And of course, there are variables to play. So HR leaders would think, okay, well, how do I make sure that we're inclusive of this age group, or, you know, people going through this particular stage in life? And yes, you know, you do need to think about that, but there are some constants that play a part, you know. So, for example, you know, simply thinking about, you know, the language which you use sounds super obvious, but making it lighthearted, jovial, you know, always putting a positive spin on things. You know, humor has always been a great way to grease the wheels, right? You know, I think men, when they read things that are clinical, quite serious, perhaps daunting, it's quite off-putting. So it's very important to approach that in an approachable way. I think one of the other key things is, you know, finding ways of leading conversations about healthcare that aren't necessarily straight away obvious that they are about healthcare. So that,
tell me more.
Yes, that might sound a little bit confusing, but I'll give you an example. So this is a real life user story, a Peppy user who gave us permission to use it, and it is anonymous, of course, as well. So this particular user chatted in using the men's health service to chat with one of our fitness practitioners. You know, he wanted to just get some insights on how to take his training to the next goal. So we booked him in for a virtual consultation. Our fitness practitioner gave him the tools to take his training to the next goal. You know, someone was coming around the corner, beach bod, wanted to put on some muscle. But he started to open up a little bit, and it became apparent that something wasn't quite right. So we ended up looping in one of our general men's health practitioners, and the individual opened up a little bit more, and, you know, we found out that, you know, his libido was low, he was quite anxious, very stressed at work, and straight away our practitioner knew these are signs of or symptoms of low testosterone. So we loop in a nutritionist to help him, you know, better improve his diet. That's just one of the things you can do with low testosterone in terms of improving lifestyle change. So he was on a classic gym monkey diet of you know, chicken and rice. So healthy fats, antioxidants, supplements to help him sleep, and then we also looped in one of our Healthy Minds experts to give him breathing techniques for those panic attacks he was having at work, and then also to signpost him to some CBT that he was unaware of that he had with his existing employer. So, long story short, sent another testosterone test a couple months down the line, results came back, happy days. But that's a really, really good example of using fitness as a vehicle to have that conversation about that individual's health.
Yeah, and it's about, again, meeting people where they are, right?
Exactly,
and in kind of what's top of mind, where they're really enthusiastic to engage, and ultimately about building trust, because you need to build a level of trust before people are willing to share some of that things with even a healthcare practitioner. If you think about how reluctant people are to discuss things, maybe say with a line manager or a colleague, even with healthcare practitioners, that it's a daunting process, and especially when you consider, this is a cohort who, on general, will not be interacting that much with healthcare professionals.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's been an absolute revelation, actually, working in men's health and understanding some of the behavioral things that go under that.